If the Jaguars move up, who's worthy of them moving up for? I'll tell you all about it here on the Friday edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Don't worry about it if you're not an audio person and a video person. You need to go to YouTube and subscribe for free to our YouTube page, and also check wherever you get your audio podcast daily to make sure you don't miss an episode. What's going on, y'all? I want to speak. We love our new people, but I want to talk to our everydayers. If you're an everydayer here on Locked On Jaguars, drop it in the comments below and just say everydayer. That's right, everydayer. We appreciate you, man, because you make us who we are and make what we do feel so good when we do it. Here's what I want to do. I want to welcome the new people into today's podcast and let you know exactly what it is I'm going to discuss. I'm going to discuss the possibilities of the Jaguars moving up. However, I'm going to give you some caveats before we start naming names in segment 2. I'm going to give you some rules that I'm going by, okay? I take what people say at face value until they prove me wrong. The Jaguars, when they told you, hey, man, I don't think we're going to – it came out and basically I'm paraphrasing. They said, we're not going to be very busy in free agency. When I hear that, I'm like, all right. Let's just see. And then they did exactly what they said they were going to do, right? That they weren't very active early in free agency, and they're going to be a draft and develop team. Draft and develop doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to secure all of these draft picks and just have 12 draft picks every year. You can't do that because that's outside of the first rounders. Everyone else you draft will be a free agent after year 4, right? You can't keep all of those people every single year. Case in point, Jawan Taylor, especially if you start winning. Once you start winning, then everybody and their brother, the equipment dude is going to want a contract. I might want a contract extension if the team starts winning. So winning brings about everyone trying to get paid and wanting to be paid, right? So a draft and develop team could mean multiple things. It could mean get a whole bunch of draft picks, whatever sticks, whatever doesn't, you move on from. That's something that you do maybe a year or two ago if you're Jacksonville. Or you can be very targeted. You can take some of your draft capital, position yourself where the hot spots are in the draft, and pick people. So if I take people at their word, Doug Peterson said that they need an edge rusher or they need pass rush, which they haven't actually addressed so far in free agency. And it's so important that for them to think that, or for anyone to think that, oh, well, they'll just draft it with a veteran later on. You know, everybody keeps talking about Jadeveon Clowney. For this to be that important, you wouldn't put it off, right? The other thing that they said is, or Walker Little can kick inside, which means they could either draft a guard, or if a tackle, the right offensive lineman falls to him, they pick him. So they signed a couple of free agents, a couple of low money free agents last week, Josh Wells and someone else. It does not prevent them. None of those guys prevents them from drafting a guy in the first round if he's the best player on the board. We know they need help at corner. Most of the people that keep doing mocks that are fans of the Jaguars consistently want to give them Brian Branch, right, to play the slot. So we know we need a slot. We know eventually they'll need an outside corner. It depends on whether you look at whether or not they think, okay, I'm not saying that they won't think that they're a Super Bowl team this year or that they have a chance to challenge for a Super Bowl. But if they are thinking that because of that, then this draft has to reflect that they need instant impact right away, then it might lead you to think that they would trade up. right? That they would trade up for the best possible player and get that one guy and not give away the farm. You don't want to give away picks from next year, and they can trade up or they can trade back. We did a podcast earlier this week saying that if they trade back, who could they get? And they may be able to get 3 guys. What I did was go back to 36. You end up with 36, 46, and 56 some sort of way. Not in one trade. It took 2 to do it. Come back to 36, get the extra asset in the late second or early third round, then come back up and land 3 of those guys in that hot spot, in that 20 spots, where I don't think there's much of a difference between all of those players. Or you could say, you know what, let's just get one more superstar. Now, build in the fact that they love their traits. Doesn't mean that they won't sign or select someone who doesn't fit it. Case in point, Darius Williams. Case in point, Christian Kirk. So it tells me that most of the talk about their traits mean on the defense, particularly in the front 7, because they have a small corner. If they were so not willing to do that, Darius Williams wouldn't be on the team, correct? Correct. I think that when you talk about them and their traits, it's mainly in the front 7 on defense and the offensive line and maybe possibly the tight end position. Outside of that, none of their receivers have these great traits that you're talking about, right? Ridley 6'1", Kirk is 5'11", Zay Jones is 6'1.5", 6'2", but you're not talking about a 6'5" catch radius guy here. So I would like to believe and like to think Evan Ingram does not fit the characteristics of what you would call a traits tight end. Evan Ingram 6'2.5", 6'3", about 225, 230. That's not what he might be 230, 235, but that's not. You think about traits, you think about Michael Mayer. You think about the kid at Georgia, Darnell Washington. On defense and in that front 7 and in certain positions at linebacker and that one corner, that's where they were all about, really, those traits there in the offensive line. So to tie all of this together, if they move up, the player not only has to be a really good player, worthy of them moving up from a positional value standpoint. Like, you're not going to move up. You don't need a quarterback. Who would you move up to get? It's always going to be a position where you're going to give up multiple draft picks for. It's got to be an offensive tackle. I don't think there's a guard worthy of moving up for. I don't think you're going to move up for a tight end because of the depth at the position. The defensive backs is seriously deep. Edge rusher is a lot of them. There are some guys that are different, but do those guys match the traits? And are you going to move up for a guy who, let's just say, won't necessarily be a full-time starter right away? I'm going to give you some names of some people who I think the Jaguars may believe, because of all of those things that I just said, may have the traits necessary for them to move up. Some possibilities, that's what we're going to discuss here on Locked On Jaguars. We'll start that in segment 2 here in just a second. I have to let you know that today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, and it's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores and threes drained. Make sure you do your research when you go on FanDuel, because not only is everything there for you, they have the information on each particular player and team that helps you make quality decisions. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we thank you for making us your first listen here again on Locked On Jaguars, where all my everydayers and my new folks hang around long enough. If you're a new person, you'll get called an everyday or two. We thank you for making us your first listen. So look, we set the rules of why if the Jaguars move up, which Doug Peterson says, hey, you see the right guy, you might move up, you might move back. So they're not they're not. They haven't given off that they are against moving up. So let me tell you some of the guys who I think they'd move up for. The obvious one is somebody that everybody anticipates might fall in the draft, and that is Jalen Carter. Would the Jaguars be a team that's going to move up if Jalen Carter slips past number 10 and he starts to get into the teens, and all it takes for you to move up is a second-round pick, especially if it gets past like 15, which I seriously doubt? Would they do it? Hell yeah, they'll do it. They'll tap in. They'll go right back to University of Georgia. They picked from University of Georgia twice in the last 2 years. I think they probably have a good enough relationship with those coaches that they have a book on Jalen Carter. So Jalen Carter's number one. Is it risky? Sure, it's risky, but it's even more risky for people who have had some misfortune and some tragedies based on the things that we kind of heard he may have been involved in, which is moving too fast in the vehicle, which causes somebody to have an accident, in this case, a fatal accident. We're not saying that he was responsible for it, but let's not be naive. He got charged with some misdemeanors, and it's connected to one of his teammates and someone else, a young lady who worked at the University of Georgia, dying. And then he came in overweight to his own workout. A team like the Raiders would probably shy away from that, since they had a first-round pick who literally went, who's accused, but we all saw the videotape. He's charged right now with killing a young lady because he ran into the back of her when he was going over 140 miles per hour in Vegas in his Ferrari or in his whatever car he had. I think it was a Corvette. A team like that ain't going to even, they probably don't even have a dude on this board that's remotely associated with anything that has to do with a vehicle accident that leads to someone's death. And I understand that. And I'm not talking about from the fact that they lost their asset. I'm talking about from the fact that you're bringing someone who did something that's very similar to someone who did something that hurt people in your community and that caused a lot of grief. And we look at these teams, we have to understand that they are in the community. Those players that come into the community are part of the community. And then because of that young lady losing her life in the manner in which she did, basically, according to witnesses, being burned alive, it caused a lot of emotions, as it should have. And it probably also makes the Raiders, if I was the Raiders, I wouldn't even vet the situation. I'd be like, no, thank you. I'm just not doing it. Okay. So we move on from that with the Raiders. The Jaguars, they haven't done that. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have experienced that to not think that drafting someone who does this is an idea, but at least they'll probably vet it a little further. And if they get more information that makes them comfortable, the kid's talent is undeniable, and at some point somebody's going to draft him. We know it. So Jalen Carter's number one because he's the first person I think that might have a little bit of a slippage and falling. Another person I think might fall is probably going to be Will Levis if a quarterback does fall. But here's the thing. We don't need a quarterback. So they're not going to come up for him. But some other guys at other positions that are positions of need that fit certain traits that are just too good to pass up if you start to see a little bit of slippage. Lucas Van Ness, the inside-outside combo pass rusher from Iowa, 6'5", goes around 270, 275. Very, very similar, not similar athletically, but in terms of if we were putting guys in certain brackets about what type of player they are, then he would be in the Trayvon Walker. So it might appear to be redundant. It's not redundant to me, though, because starting has never been a problem because he never started a game at Iowa, even though he was probably their best player on defense. I think you could get Lucas Van Ness, find a way to figure out how to play him, Trayvon, and Josh Allen together. There's a scenario out here involving Josh Allen. I won't discuss it now. We'll discuss it at some other point. But here's what you get in Van Ness. You get a 5-year pass rusher, just like you got a 5-year pass rusher in Trayvon. That means you'll have guys on that line with Doug Peterson saying that pass rush is the most important thing and the first thing that they need to improve. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to sit there and wait until all the traits guys go? You think they're going to sit there and wait for guys who don't have the traits to fall to them You think they're going to take Nolan Smith, who doesn't fit the traits? You think they're going to draft Will McDonald, who probably doesn't fit the traits? And I know a lot of folks are saying Will McDonald is not that much smaller than K'Lavon Chasen. Well, this administration didn't draft K'Lavon Chasen, okay? So what you have to understand is, are they going to sit here and wait till all of those guys leave, with Doug mentioning pass rush first? Are they going to sit there and wait till all of these guys are gone, till all of the guys are gone, and then reach for someone? Or are they going to address the most important position and the most important aspect that they are missing on their team and go up and get a guy? It makes the most sense to me that around that 15 area, if there's a team that's willing to move back, that's exactly what they'll do. I think the one that is there is Lucas Van Ness. Now, you could talk about Keon White, who I love, and I told everybody that I love Keon White. The issue with Keon White is he's a little bit rough around the edges in terms of how much experience he has playing the game. He's a former basketball player, and it would be viewed as a little bit of a project, and he would really be redundant when it comes to evaluating Trayvon Walker and Keon White, although the athleticism is something that makes me, when I think about it, I go crazy, because I think it would absolutely be perfect. I got one more wild card for you if he falls. I don't think he will, but these are guys that I would move up for, and I'll tell you who that is in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, third and final segment here on Friday as you get ready to go enjoy your weekend and continue to get ready for the draft. Who are the players that I think are worthy of the Jacksonville Jaguars moving up? One is, before I get to the other one is on offense. Whatever offensive tackle tickles your fancy. Could it be Darnell Wright if Broderick Jones starts to slip a little bit? If one of those other tackles that are rated really, really high starts to fall? I don't think it's going to happen. I think they'll probably run into Osiris Torrance if they sit at 24. I'm hearing rumors, though, that more people like him than you think, that guys like Osiris Torrance, guys like John Michael Schmitz, and Joe Tippmann might all go a whole lot earlier than we think, and that Osiris Torrance can play right tackle and left guard, so he might not even make it to the Jaguars. Would they sit around and wait for DeJuan Jones or move back and take DeJuan Jones? Would they do that? I don't know. The thing is, though, pick whatever offensive lineman you like, and if there starts to be a run on them, then that's the offensive lineman that might be worthy for the Jaguars to move up and go get. If you get another right tackle and play Walker Little at left guard, and I'm only mentioning that because Doug Peterson mentioned it, then that means you'll have a guy with a first-round contract, and if he can play, then you got him on the cheap for 5 years at about 25% of what Jawan Taylor costs. And if he's anywhere close to Jawan Taylor, then it's a win-win situation for the team. Here's the thing. The last guy, and I don't think he's going to fall, I think he's the best corner on the board, but I think there might be a team that likes another guy better than him. Devon Witherspoon, I think is the best corner, and he has an it factor, in my opinion, even though he's not tall like Sauce Gardner. In my opinion, when I watch him on tape, he looks like an NFL guy that reminds me of Marshawn Lattimore, who's going to play for 10 years and probably make 5 or 6 Pro Bowls. He's just instinctive. He's hard-nosed. He's just a player that I really, really like. Some people like Christian Gonzalez, I would assume, better than him because of certain traits. I think for the Jacksonville Jaguars, when you talk about a perfect draft choice, Devon Witherspoon would be it, because he can play inside until he has to play outside, okay? And he can do it all. And he brings about a lot. He brings about some nastiness and some suddenness to this defense that would absolutely help the pass rush, because I just think he's that good. He had his workout, and he ran anywhere between a 4.42 and a 4.46 and a 40-yard dash, and that answered a lot of questions. We know he's tough as nails. He's a junkyard dog. He's twitchy. He has very, very good technique, and I just think he looks like a guy who's going to be a great 10-year pro. With that being said, he would have to at least slip into the teens a little bit, the high teens. And if the Jaguars want him, I don't think they'd have to give up with giving up 24 with a swap. I don't think you give up next year's first. Even though I remember a couple of years ago, the Saints went up like 10 spots and gave up next year's first to go up and take that defensive end, Davenport. So they could very well do that same thing. The Giants went from in the 20s to get up. The Bears went from in the 20s to get up to 11 to take Justin Fields, and they gave up a future first-round pick. There may be a way you can get around it. I already mentioned the possibilities of a certain player being traded that makes that deal even sweeter. I don't want the Jaguars to give up all of their draft capital, but if they are just in the mood to add the one guy, one quality guy, it has to be one of the people that I just mentioned. Just one. There's no way I move up for anybody else. I personally like Nolan Smith. I just don't think that when you think about traits, that they're going to move up and trade up for a guy that doesn't have certain traits. So that's it. Think about it. Drop something in the comments. Hit that like button, please. It helps the podcast if you do that. Think about it over the weekend. Hit me up on social media at Shop Talking Wig, or right here in the comment section. I'll get back to you on that. The other thing is, I want you to make sure you check out Locked On NFL Scouting by the Draft Dudes with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, because they talk to you all about team building, talk to you all about these prospects. They are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's Monday through Friday, and you can catch that wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. All right, you guys have a nice weekend. Enjoy Easter Sunday. Take care of each other. We'll see you the next time here on Locked On Jaguars.